Morning, people. Today we are having building construction. Let's now talk about precast concrete frames. Uh, Precast concrete frames. These are frames that are suitable for single, story, and low-rise application. Precast concrete frames provide the skeleton for the building and can be clad externally and finished internally by all the traditional methods. Now let's look at advantages of using precast concrete frames. Frames are produced under factory-controlled conditions, resulting in a uniform product of both quality and accuracy. So the product is of quality and accurate. And then repetitive casting lowers the cost of individual members. Number three, off-site production receives site space for other activities. Frames can be assembled in cold weather and generally by semi-skilled labor, so it does not require complex skills to cast them together. Let's now look at disadvantages of using precast concrete frames. As although a wide range of choice of frames is available from various manufacturers, these systems lack the design flexibility. So they lack design flexibility of cast in situ purpose-made frames. Site planning can be limited. Site planning can be limited to manufacturers' delivery and unloading programs and requirements. So it can cause delays in other things in the construction site. Then let's lifting plants of a type and size not normally required by traditional construction, those may be required. Let's now look at foundation connections. These are preferred methods of connection is to set the column into a pocket cast into a reinforced concrete pad foundation, and it is suitable for light to medium loadings. Where heavy loadings are encountered, it may be necessary to use steel base plate. So a steel base plate is required when heavy column loadings are encountered. The base plate should be secured to reinforced concrete pad foundation with holding down bolts. So it must be put in place using the holding down bolts. Let's now look at the typical details of column to base connections. You can see there the typical details for the column to base connections. Here is the precast concrete column grouted into pocket in foundation. Here is the temporary steel wedges to put the column into place and it supported. Here we can see it's a yes, these are the typical details for the column to base connections. Let's now move to the next item. This is the other typical details for column to base connection with holding down bolts. You can see these are the holding down bolts. You can see them. They have said this method is being used where the column is encountering heavy loads. You can see the details are just like the previous image, but the difference is only here with this, with holding down bolts for the column. Those are the typical details for column based connections. Let's move to the next item. Column to column connections. As precast columns are usually cast in one length and can be up to 4 stories in height. They are either reinforced with bar reinforcement or they are pre-stressed according to the loading conditions. If column to column are required, they are usually made at 4 levels above the beam to column connection and can range from a simple dowel connection to a complex connection involving in situ concrete. Let's now look at the typical details for column to column connections. As you can see here, you have the upper column and you have the lower column. You can see the in situ concrete has already been placed, which is placed inside. You can see number 4 threaded stud cast into upper column. You can see made steel bearing plate welded to main reinforcing bust of lower column. You can see there's leveling nuts. Yes, those are the typical details of column to column connection. Now let's look at this second image here. You can see how you have this the upper column and the lower column. You can see where the connection has been made. This is the dry joint. Exposed and lapping main reinforcing bars. You can see the reinforcing bars for the columns are there. These are the typical details for in situ concrete or column to column connections. Now let's look at beam to column connections. Yes, the main objective is to provide structural continuity at the joint at the junction. This is usually achieved by using these two methods. One is projecting bearing haunches cast onto the columns with a projecting dowel or stud bolt to provide both location and fixing. Steel to steel fixing, which are usually in the form of a cover or bracket projecting from the column, providing a bolted connection to a steel plate cast into the end of the beam. As now let's look at typical details of column to beam connections. You can see here is the Yes, we have the repeated edge beam, we have the wire bars,